Okay, quiz two. How did the Spanish who attempted and failed to settle among the Caddo miscommunicate over the image of the Virgin Mary? The Caddo thought that the image of the Virgin that the Spanish were carrying was a sign of peace, because that's how the Caddo indicated that they were peaceful. They would send out their women first. And so they misunderstood this, what the Spanish were doing by carrying the Virgin. It was strictly religious, but that was a good thing for the Spanish because that meant that the Caddo met with them peacefully. What year was Spanish San Antonio founded? 1718. Alicon. Same year as New Orleans, by the way. What was the greatest failure of the Spanish government in Spanish Texas? As I've said a zillion times, its failure to populate Spanish Texas to any significant degree because there wasn't mining wealth up here. The Indians were too tough. It was too far from Mexico City. And we're starting to see the implications of that as we move into the Texas Revolution in the 1820s. There's very few Tejanos in Texas. And very quickly, beginning in the 1820s, they're outnumbered by Anglos and eventually even by 1836 by slaves. Okay. The Chicken War is the answer to the 1719 Global War. And what that meant was the Spanish finally said, enough is enough. We're gonna send somebody up there that knows what he's doing. And they sent up San Miguel de Aguayo, the governor of Coahuila. He comes up with thousands of goats and sheep and horses, and he reinforces some missions, he establishes some missions, and he creates Goliad. And by the time he leaves in 1722 or so, the Spanish firmly have a firm footing in Texas for the first time ever. Okay, the engine of history that drove the Spanish to pay attention to Texas was that the French were next door after La Salle, and the Spanish were freaked out. They thought the French were going to come into Texas, not because they cared about Texas, but Texas was a buffer zone between Louisiana and the very rich mining areas of central Mexico. During what was the geographical relationship between the Spanish and Comanche empires? Basically, the Comanche Empire bordered on the Spanish Empire in Texas. The Comanches were north and west, just a little bit north and west of San Antonio, which was good for San Antonio because if they wanted to, the Comanches could have wiped out San Antonio in an afternoon. So you have these two bordering empires. Number 7, the mother mission of San Antonio, San Juan Bautista, really during the 1700s, the most important mission in Texas, rather, not San Antonio, in Texas. And we often forget about it now because it's in Mexico, it's a ruin, but it was the gateway to Texas. It was built in 1700, very significant during the Spanish period. It opened the door to Texas. After the San Saba, the mission was burned down and the priests were killed. The Spanish sent up a punitive expedition, but it was basically a failure. The Spaniards did kill some innocent Indians, but when they encountered the Norteño Indians, the Comanche and their allies in North Texas, the Norteños had guns, they were dug in, and the Spanish retreated back into the interior of Mexico without really causing much damage at all to the Norteños for what they'd done at San Saba. The people, anyone who's against me all the time, the Comanche, which is kind of an interesting name. Anyone that's against me all the time, I think it says a lot about the Comanche. The Spanish were, they were kicked out of Santa Fe, and this affected the course of Texas history because Indian groups all throughout the West gained access to horses, or the horse as a technology, as a transportation technology, and including the small Comanche group in what's now southeastern Wyoming. And once these Comanches got, once this small group, which was a very weak and not very fearful Indian group at all, once they got the horse, they kicked ass. And ultimately, they dominated Texas, Northwest Texas, from the 1720s to the 1870s. Pretty incredible to think about it. So the horse changed everything. It allowed the Comanche and other groups like the Apache to hunt. They could hunt bison. They could travel. So think of the horse as a technology, and the Comanches especially turned out to be geniuses at the horse, not only in terms of riding and going to war on the horse, but breeding, that kind of a thing. That's number 10. Number 11, in 1756, the Apache Indians they tricked the Spanish into creating a mission north and west of San Antonio, a few hundred miles, called San Saba. And the Comanches didn't like that because it was in the Comancheria. So what happened is the Comanches created an alliance with other Norteño Indians, and they destroyed the mission. They killed two of the priests that were at the mission. And what it did was it forced the Spanish to retreat from this area. And in effect, the Spanish did not have any real authority in Texas, north of San Antonio, because the Comancheria is north and west in San Antonio. So basically, when you think of San Saba, it's the Comanche kicking the Spanish out of their region, of their empire. And as I said before, the reason that the Comanche don't go ahead and just destroy San Antonio is that from the point of view of the Comanche, San Antonio is outside the Comancheria. And so they don't really care about San Antonio. And the other thing is that after Austin and the colonists started coming into Texas, they came into East Texas to grow cotton because of the rain. And they were outside the Comancheria too. So when Americans came into Texas initially, they were in East Texas, and they weren't really getting hassled by the Comanche at all, because it was outside of what the Comanche considered their empire, the Comancheria.